Okay, if you're not back from break, please raise your hand. Okay, just curious, okay. I'm still doing this, am I? Oh yes, we're still on the conditions. Yeah, the three conditions. I want to stay with this for a little bit. To use the grammar, conscious grammar, you got to know the rule, you've got to have time, and you've got to be thinking about the rules, focusing on form. And our research in several of my books says this over and over again. This only happens in certain classes, artificial situations, but exception. It can happen in real life. And this is the one part where grammar can help us a little bit, just a little. In your own language, there are some rules that you're expected to know that you don't. Isn't that true? We have to think, gee, how is this done? For example, in English, there are all these rules we learned in school that I keep forgetting. My favorite one is this one. Right? Now, according to my scientific research, just asking people to raise their hands, my conclusion is about 1/3 of very well-read English speakers have acquired this rule. And they always get it right. So some of you don't have a problem with this. When you have to make the decision, no problem. Others, another 1/3, sometimes hesitate, not sure. For me, I have to look it up if I want to get it right, even after all these years. Then another group of people don't know that there's any difference, all right? So what do you do with this? This is a good place for grammar because making mistakes in public, in spelling, punctuation, or in grammar can ruin your life. It can be humiliation. There's the famous story of former Vice President of the United States, Dan Quayle, who made a mistake in public. He misspelled tomato. Does it have an E at the end? Or potato? I forget which one. Does it have an E, potato? See, we still remember this. That is a mistake, and people blame him. They say he's stupid. This could happen to anybody. That's not fair, in my opinion. So I say we do teach them. This is a good idea, but I recommend waiting until the students are in secondary school. First, let them read, let them pick up the rules. Then you can tell them these little rules that you can check on, with spell check, etc. But that's really an exceptional thing. Mostly, it's acquisition all the way. Okay, another hypothesis. This one is very famous because it took all of our attention in the 1970s. It's called the natural order hypothesis. And it says that we acquire, not learn, but acquire the rules of language in a predictable order. Some things come in the beginning, some things come in the middle, some things come at the end. For example, in English, English has a first language, English has a second language. This one, ing, comes very, very early, okay? This one, in contrast, the third person singular, comes much later. For children acquiring English as a first language, there could be 6 months to a year between the two. For adults, the third person singular may never come. My favorite story is my colleague at the university. My friend Matt Shibatani. He was an expert on grammar, English grammar and Japanese grammar. He knew more about both than anybody I knew. And I always used to get his advice when I needed to know something about grammar in general or Chomsky's work. Now, Matt spoke English as a second language. He made mistakes on the third person singular. Matt Shibatani knew more about English than anyone in Los Angeles. And he still made mistakes because it's late acquired. I want to tell you some amazing facts about the natural order. Number one, it's not simply simple to complicated. A lot of things look very easy, but they're very late acquired, like this guy here. You think anyone who could tie their shoes could get this right? It's so simple. No, it's very, very late acquired, okay? And a lot of things that look difficult are acquired very easily by children and adults. And even rules, even ones that we can't describe the rules, we still can. So the problem, you see the problem right away. When we have what's called a grammatical syllabus, we go from simple to complicated. But that's not what's going on in the mind of the acquirer. What is simple to the linguist could be very late acquired. Number 2, you cannot change the natural order. You cannot change it with instruction. I have tried. Do you know how many times I have looked up the difference between ser and estar? Hundreds of times, including last night. I get curious. Why can't I remember this? Well, it's just difficult to do. It's late acquired, and I can study it, get it right for 2 hours, and then I forget the rule. Do you have the same experience? Please say yes. Okay. Does this make you feel better? Please say yes. Okay. Okay. So just like good wine, it can't be acquired until it's ready. Okay. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking the same thing I thought many years ago when in 1970 something, 1980, I gave a presentation at the TESOL convention. I know you were there. It was a big crowd, standing room only, because there were only 10 chairs in the room and 12 people came. So standing room only. And I presented this hypothesis, which I now think is completely wrong. Let's teach along the natural order. Just tell us. We'll do the ing early, we'll do third person singular. I thought that was natural. No. It turns out it's a bad idea. Don't teach along any order. I want to spend the next few minutes attacking the grammatical syllabus. I want to say no grammatical syllabus is correct. We should not have any grammatical syllabus. Are you surprised? This is big stuff. I'm about to make your lives much easier, and make teaching much easier and much more fun for you and your students. But let's work on this first. Let me tell you about it. Go down to 7A, the grammatical syllabus. The grammatical syllabus has some problems with it. The grammatical syllabus means we're going to have a new rule every day. When we have a story, it's to practice a certain tense, right? And you practice it and get corrected. Problems. Well, we can't base it on the natural order because we don't know the natural order for every single language, every single rule. We know enough to say it's probably true, but we can't do it with each one. Also, if you have a grammatical syllabus, we guarantee that your class will be boring. If your hidden agenda is to do the future tense, it's impossible to say anything interesting. Now here's why interesting is important. I'm going to take a little detour. Input has to be interesting. Otherwise, nobody will pay attention to it. Let me summarize for you the last 40 years of my work. To acquire language, you need input that is comprehensible and interesting. That's all my work combined into one sentence. Easy to say, hard to do. What do you talk about? How do you keep people interested? This is the job of the language teacher. It's very easy to give people input that's comprehensible but not interesting. That's called school. Most of school is quite comprehensible, but who cares? It's also easy to give students input that's interesting, but not comprehensible. Tell interesting stories and nobody understands you. And many of my colleagues have dedicated years of their lives to giving us input that is neither comprehensible nor interesting, in my opinion. So we want to give people input that's comprehensible and interesting at the same time. We want it to be more than interesting. In my opinion, the last few years, we want it to be so interesting you forget that it's in another language. We want it to be compelling. That's today's new vocabulary word. We want it to be compelling. We want students, when they hear the story, do the activity, to forget who they are to forget what time it is, to not worry about their problems, be only, like you see a good movie. When it's compelling, it puts you in what we call a state of flow. The world stops, only the movie, like Terminator 17. Saw that one? Okay. We want compelling, comprehensible input. Having a rule of the day that you're practicing is nearly impossible to be compelling. That's the problem. Let me take another vacation from this and tell you about compelling a little more. Then we'll return to this natural order thing. I got the idea of compelling from a case history. This, the son of a colleague of mine. Her name is Christy Lau. She lives in the Bay Area. And this is about her son, Vincent. Vincent, in the articles we wrote, we call him Paul, but his name is Vincent. Vincent's a really nice kid. He's in his second year of college. I really like him. He grew up with two languages, Cantonese and English. Mom and dad spoke Cantonese. They're from Hong Kong. And grandparents lived with them as Cantonese speakers. So he grew up all very comfortable with all these languages. Cantonese, by the way, is the language of Hong Kong and parts of China. It is not a dialect of Chinese. It's a language. It's a real language. The other one is Mandarin, and they're different. They're not the same. Well, when he was a little boy, Christy and her husband had to work long hours. Occasionally, they hired a babysitter. The babysitter was a Mandarin speaker. She came over, turned on the television to Mandarin cartoons. Now, Cantonese and Mandarin have a little bit of the same vocabulary, kind of like Spanish and Italian. But if you speak Spanish, that does not mean you speak Italian. You all know this. Okay, it gives you a start, but it's not the same. Doesn't mean you speak French automatically, all right? So, but the vocabulary helped, and the cartoons. Do you ever watch children's cartoons? They're wonderful. My favorite, of course, SpongeBob. SpongeBob is wonderful. SpongeBob is the nicest character in all of fiction. You know that? You ever watch the show? He has this friend, you know, Patrick Star, who's the best friend anybody could have. And he's always worried about doing the right thing. And his boss is so awful. Okay, Mr. Crab, right? There's a problem with Mr. Crab. I've been worried about this for many years. Mr. Crab owns the Krabby Patty, the Krusty Krab, okay? And their favorite dish is crab sandwiches. But Mr. Crab is a crab. Something is wrong with this. I think they need therapy, all right? Anyway, and oh God, my favorite one, I don't know if you get this here. It's called Regular Show. Have you ever seen that? You know about it? These writers are on drugs. It is a regular show. Not the regular show, regular show. It's totally weird. I watch it with my grandchildren and I watch it alone. It's that good. I watch it on airplanes. I go to the children's channel. Okay. Anyway, so the quality of these programs is very, very high. And he had a little help from the caretaker and a little vocabulary. So gradually started to understand. When he entered elementary school, he started watching children's programs in Mandarin. In high school, Dad would come home with 2 movies every weekend in Mandarin. In the evening, the whole family would watch the news in Mandarin. Today, Vincent speaks Mandarin. When company comes over and they're Mandarin speakers, no problem. The family visits China. They go to Beijing. They go to Taiwan. He's fine. There's no problem. The point, though, Vincent doesn't care about Mandarin.